and welcome back. Today, staying connected with your customer base has become more convenient than traditional methods of marketing. Long before inbound became the 101 of marketing, word of mouth marketing was a crucial factor in creating brand recognition and boosting business growth. While customer recommendations continue to be the centerpiece for making purchase decisions, the growth of user generated content plays a crucial role as well. When consumers love your products or services and see value for their investment, they'll spread the word. This is why branded online communities are becoming more common. They are an excellent medium to promote brand advocacy, support information exchanges between consumers, and provide real time feedback to brands. Now, let's take a deep dive into all this. We have some of the best community minds in the business to talk about this. Allow me to call on the stage the moderator for this panel discussion, Vidula Khanna, community moderator at Crizity. So here's Vidula with the next panel discussion, determining the true value of brand advocates in communities. Over to you, Vidula.
Thank you, Gunja. Considering a brand is no longer what companies tell people nowadays, but instead what people tell their friends. And that's where brand advocates come into the picture. As far as online communities are concerned, they play a crucial role in driving community engagement as well as business growth. These both are pivotal to boost the online communities. Well, I'm really very excited to learn more. So, here are our panelists for this discussions. First up, I have John Summers, founder of Communify and an expert consultant on online community management. Apart from communities, John leads business transformation initiatives in sales, product marketing, support, as well as social media. Moving ahead, I have Neha Agarwal, manager, ex International Community Development at Quora. While her team is building a strong community for vernacular languages, Neha has built the largest and the only Indian parenting community of 3 million mothers. That is really incredible. Moreover, she is also a host for the CMX India chapter. Thank you guys for joining us, John and Neha, both of you. So let's get started. John, there's a question I have for you. As you lead business transformation initiatives in communities, sales, product marketing, support, as well as social media, do you think there's a right way to identify superfans?
So this is first off, like I know I've done a resume there, but brand is like one of my favorite things. So let's just talking about brand and brand advocates. It goes back to like where I really some of my roots in community, and I really enjoy the brand. So I've always been a supporter of developing these relationships with key power players, advocates. The names have been, power users. They have changed over the years, but they're really your most loyalist people. And they're saying, is there a right way to identify them? No, there isn't. There's common ways, right? I think that's what we go to is there's common ways people identify there. So there's not a right way or wrong way, because the common ways you think is okay, this person's how many posts or how active they are, but a lot of times those aren't necessarily your brand advocates. They might be the most active people, but they're not the one people that are maybe answering or actually solving the problems or really giving that in-depth thing. So there's a qualitative and a qualitative kind of metric that only comes from being active in your community. What do you think is about the right way to find advocates? Yeah.
Well, I think you just nailed the head. I think there is no right or wrong way. I think every community, in my opinion, is very unique, and the community that comes with it is extremely unique. And I think you do you, right? You figure out how you identify your champions and your advocates in the community. We could talk about ways. We could, talk about ways in which you could identify some of those people. But I think one thing that I would always say, and I think this is something I've learned over the past couple of years that I've been doing community building, is that do not shy away from experimenting, right? Try out new ways, because there is no right way or a wrong way to this, right?
Yeah.
Um, Continue to pivot, but learn your lessons very early on, right? And if something is not working out, um, set it aside, try something else.
Yeah,
um,
every community is a little different, right? Like,
exactly.
so you got to really think, like, when I was at the Sims running like Electronic Arts Sim stuff, what motivated those people and got them engaged, or how I recruited my advocates was way different than when I was at an enterprise cybersecurity company, right? And there I'm looking, okay, who is the smartest guy, who
Yeah.
is the who is like got the most PhDs that I can find. I want this guy on my side, right? But like when I'm at the Sims, I'm like, who's the most creative artist and is fun and is sociable and is friendly with everybody else, right? So it really goes back to what are your, connecting what your brand
Yeah.
guidelines are, your brand company beliefs are, right? And trying to find people that embody your company's beliefs in them. And then it goes into our next question is, really trying to keep them motivated, right? That's the other kind of part of it as well too.
Yeah, and before we kind of move on, to the next question, one thing that I definitely want to say is that um, I think there are various ways of finding them. Um, However, I think just getting creative, but beginning with your community, right? Because your advocates are there within your community. Prioritize, those people who are really voluntarily giving the community the time, and spending a lot of time helping people. But also, I think what is very important is identifying the goal of your advocate program. I think that will also help you identify the ways in which you identify some of those advocates, right? So, let's say if you want somebody to kind of help you grow your community, to go and talk about your community outside of the platform or wherever that you're building your community, I think you need to kind of look for certain skills in the advocates, and you then need to identify how do you find them, where do you find them, or say for example you want somebody to kind of really help people out with their queries, and bring down the time
Just
that your team is spending answering some questions. Finding those people would identifying that goal will help you understand where to find
just
them.
using like the third party advocates. If you go into like the consumer world, third
Yeah.
party advocates can cost you a significant chunk of your budget, right? So because it really comes down to compensation for these advocates on the
Yeah.
consumer side of things. The B2B side of things, you see more people in it for the clout, in it
Mm.
for maybe a little bit of the swag, but they're really into it for the intangible thing. That like I just heard Todd talking about NFTs and non fungible tokens, and how those things will empower people. I know some of my most important advocates, they were so happy I just gave them a badge, right? Like they were the pro or the expert, or they're at the top of the leaderboard. And then when they went to the conference, they got a little something extra on their badge, and that made them feel empowered. So I do really think you got to think of what your industry is, what's acceptable in those terms. If you're say an energy drink company, your strategy is totally different, right?
Absolutely. And I think, again, when you're thinking about how do you want to kind of motivate your advocates, or how you're rewarding them, I think one of the other key points that we tend to perhaps ignore is ask them what motivates them, right? And I think that will again help you identify what are some of your reward points, right, that you want to kind of incorporate in the program to kind of keep them motivated, and they could be intrinsic, and some of them could be extrinsic as well, right? I mean, there's a whole debate that we can do on that particular topic, but I think do not forget to ask your advocates what will really motivate them, what will keep them going, and I think that's
I
how
do
you perhaps design that program.
I did a hybrid at one point where people can gain their points and reputation in the community and
Mm,
then build a store with it when it had kind of branded materials and they could trade their online points and from credit, into like actual t-shirts and coffee mugs and stuff. And that was really fun. Versus like when I was on the consumer side, we would actually fly these people in, put them in
mm,
hotels, bring them into the office, sit them down with the developers and with the designers, and they would take notes and they would take pictures, and they go back and they blog and they do YouTube and they create the mountains of content off that. But we would have like 5 or 6 of these people in the office at one time. And that was so it's different when you got to think about what your industry is, and what's acceptable is for sure. But community is a huge tool that any size or anybody can use to kind of find your advocates, right? Because you said some of those people you find in the community are way better than when you find them kind of like out in the wild, right? They already like you, they're already on there, right? You just gotta build that relationship, right? How do you leverage your community as an advocacy tool?
I mean, you know, there are different ways of doing it, right? And I think just going back to the point that we were talking about earlier is identifying, what the goal is. Now, say for example, I can give a couple of examples of what we've done in the past. Is let's say at Cora, uh, there are a bunch of people who were extremely enthusiastic about doing events, right? And we were thinking about how could we really motivate them, how could we kind of really involve them even more. um, and we were kind of looking at doing a lot of events through the year, right? Bringing people virtually together, and talking about various topics that really matter to them. And one thing that came out of this entire conversation and this thought process that we were having is user-led events, right? And that's something that they absolutely loved. There were a couple of people that we identified who applied to lead some of these events, um, and they created an entire extremely well thought through program and ran it end to end, right? So I think there's a huge value in thinking around how could you involve your advocates to kind of run some of the events that you would like to do, because your resources are extremely limited, right?
Yeah,
um,
it's a big deal, right? When I would say at Oracle, right, we had a huge user group program, and led across the world, and we were able to identify these people by like really tapping in. So being part of community, if you're a global organization, you need to be tapping into your local resources. Who's your local in-country marketing manager? Who's your local in-country marketing event manager? Who's your local in-country sales guy? How can you get to know these people, build relationships in those countries, and find someone who's a power user in that area to build those relationships. Because then when you have your main parent conference back at Silicon Valley, now you're bringing the heads of those user groups. They might get a free pass, right? Because now I have 40 user groups in 40 countries around the world, right? Or 40 different cities, right? And now I'm going to give I'm going to give free passes to all those guys that come, or discounts or codes. It's building that relationships. You're showing you care in that country. You're giving them content maybe in their native language, something that they don't get all the time. You're going out of your way translating stuff into their local language, or giving them some, if an engineer, someone is available to talk to them, from the US during their time zone, which is another thing. So you orchestrate some guy to stay up at 2 a.m. to talk to some guys in Thailand. They're like super excited because now they don't get to talk to this guy ever because of the time differences and
Absolutely, absolutely.
access. Little
Yeah.
things like that go a long way.
Yeah, and I think I really like kind of stressing upon, while obviously extrinsic motivation factors are important, but I think also kind of constantly thinking about some of those intrinsic values that you can pretty much use and motivate some of these advocates. Um, A couple of things that again we've done at Quora is giving them access to people at Quora, right?
It's huge.
Getting them to speak to some of our, say for example, community builders out there, or leaders out there, or product people. Earlier when pre-pandemic, we used to kind of actually call in a bunch of people into the office and have focus group discussions with some of these people who really cared about the product and gave a lot of feedback, and were contributing very good quality content, and these were experts in their own will. And I think they just felt so rewarded because they were being heard. They were given that kind of importance.
Those access request kind of rewardment things are great.
Yeah.
I did one when I was at NetApp, a storage company, where the founder Dave Hitz, he like wrote books and stuff, and I gave away like a 1 hour session with him
Yeah.
as a thing, and it was like a big deal. We went through versus like doing in-person events. I made an event where like I rented out a video game arcade and said, if you're a member, you can come and play, and meet the other user group members, meet the other community
Absolutely.
members.
And they love to kind of meet each other as well, right? It's a great
Yeah.
networking opportunity. They're meeting each other online, but I think just getting that face-to-face time is just so valuable to them.
Yes.
And apart from that, a couple of other things like when we were to kind of release any feature, I think giving them a bit of a sneak peek in terms
Oh,
of what
yeah.
could they expect.
That's a
And
given, right? Getting your product team involved with these people. So you have your
yeah,
different layers of like engagement, right? So obviously now you want to be getting on the product side. Like, hey, product managers, I have these guys, they're super users, That's like when I was doing the Sims, we'd give them the game ahead of time, like months, 6 months, a year ahead of time. These people would get copies ahead of time, they'd play it, and then they'd come back to the office. And that's a captive audience, right? If you're not,
absolutely.
you have to be using it for that kind of stuff.
And you could get very creative, right? Like, sorry, I know we need to move on to the other question, but I think just get more creative, right? Like I tend to leave LinkedIn recommendations at times for some people that I know will really value it, to a
Totally.
bunch of other things that you could think very creatively about.
Yeah, like I always said, like at our conference, getting them speaking slots too, or
Oh
at
yeah,
other conferences within their industry, right? Because I know I have some pull at other, agencies or other bigger conferences, is trying to get them to speak on your behalf at other conferences,
yeah,
and then paying and picking up the cost for them on the conference. That'll go a long way to your. These are like your main guys, right? These are guys that are like actively vlogging. You have a podcast, running a YouTube channel. Your most highly engaged people are going to have this type of stuff. These people, you need to not just be thinking, oh, they're doing it for free intrinsically. These people are doing it for a job. So I think some
yeah.
people need to remember that as well too when you're talking at the highest level of these advocacies. Most people just do it for. I did a presentation. Do it for a T-shirt, right?
Let's
get
be
them
honest, yeah.
right? You get them a bumper sticker, and they'll pretty much do anything you need them to do. But how? One of our other questions here is really about increasing purchasing intention with advocacy. So, how can we really leverage these advocates to help increase the purchase velocity, or the number of units, or the reach into new markets? It's a delicate balance, I think, in my mind personally, like getting into sales and community. But the reality is, people take your recommendations. So I always connect like advocacy and product recommendations into sales, right? So I think that's where you kind of can connect your advocates to make sure they're going out onto like the third-party software review sites, and leaving good feedback, and then giving them accreditation for those type of things, to help increase sales leads. What are your thoughts around sales and advocacy?
I think again, I think this is a very sensitive topic, and I think there's a lot of thought that needs to kind of go into doing something like this, because your community is smart. They will see through it, right? And I think just doing it the right way is very important. Like, for example, when I was building this community for mothers, um, as you can imagine, parenting comes with extremely high level of trust, right? It's a very emotional decision that you're making, right, when it comes to your entire parenting journey and having a baby and raising a child. And I think the way that some of the ways in which the advocates helped these people make some of these purchasing decisions, be it for services or for products, was proof of concept of how advocates can help improve sales, either for a brand or for that you're working with, or for the products that your company is trying to sell. And a couple of ways in which you can do that is exactly what John said. I think ensuring that there are genuine reviews, people are kind of talking about their real experiences, and you can enable that in so many ways, right? Where you could bring these people together and enable some of these conversations to happen, where each of them are talking to each other, where they're asking about some of their queries about the product, or what helped them, what did not help them. I think enabling those conversations to help that person come to that point of making that purchase, and enabling them to make that purchasing decision is very important. I think the intent is extremely important there.
Another thing that just came to mind was another kind of tactic trying to talk about advocacy and sales. So I know, like in the enterprise, sales cycle is pretty long, right? And so your advocacy, I know myself, I've done it, and other companies done it, where during you introduce these advocates to your customers, right? You're going to an event, you're going to dinner, you're taking them out to do something. It's Visa, and you're taking them to a baseball game. You bring one of your advocates with you. Then they can hear right from the customer. This is my customer. He's my advocate. He uses the product. You can talk from Visa. You can talk to him free reign. He works at Wells Fargo, right? So he's in your industry as well too, and you get it right from the horse's mouth. So getting your salespeople involved with your advocates is a thing to do, right? You can tap almost every organization. Whether it's product, whether it's sales, whether it's support, right? Your advocates can help you out. I think that's the real key takeaway.
I love that last point that you made, John. I think just bringing these people in, because I think as an organization, we're so consumed by what we're building. We forget, at times, or we might miss certain insights which some of these brand advocates can give you while you're thinking about making that pitch, right? And I think they would really tell you how, your product helped them or could help a potential customer, and that's something that you could align your pitch to as well, and or when you're building your marketing strategy. So I love that point, John. Totally agree with you.
So, thank you guys for those amazing insights. This was a really gripping session, and I'm sure that our audience is going back with tips and tricks that will enable them to take their community game a level up. So, thank you, John, Neha, and Vidula, for these incredible insights. And
Thank you so much.
I'd also like to remind everybody that our subject matter experts are available in the lounge area and the booth. So please feel free to catch up with them one on one. And with that, all this excitement deserves a coffee break, and we'll resume the community fun in 5 minutes. Let's be back in a jiff, and I'll see you in our next spotlight session titled How to Conduct a Listening Tour in Online Communities.